creating a culture of love.
That's the thing. When we are so heady and it's all up here, it's very mental, it actually blocks the heart. So in a really simplistic sense, meditation is getting out of the head and dropping into the heart. It's just a time through breath work and different practices where we're not thinking. And so thinking mentalization is where we create all these different ways we separate ourselves or we create that division. And so if we have more of that space where we're really coming from the heart, it just opens up everything.
Kimberly, thank you for coming in all the way from Topanga.
I made it. I'm very proud of myself. Thank you for having me.
All in one piece, unscathed.
I found the parking, finally. Yes, I'm very happy to be here in your beautiful studio.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So I'm excited to dive into this today. And you've got this book coming out. But let's kind of talk about your journey and how you got to this point.
Yes.
And we are all enough. And we have this constant reminder of our lack of enoughness, our lack of self-worth. And a lot of it is driven by fear, I mean, we all need to market and spend on media, but I believe the way it's being done, it's just showing us like, well, you're not pretty enough, so go put on this makeup. You're not fit enough, so go get cryo freezing and nipped and tucked, or whatever the case is. You're not manly enough, go get a really big manly truck. Like, we're constantly told that we're not enough. At the end of the day, we are enough, and hopefully we find the self-love in ourselves by doing the work and just realizing that. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yes. So not only are we enough, but we're all unique. So this book is my 6th book, and so there's been this building up of my first few books were about nutrition, and then I started crossing into lifestyle and going wider, and then I wrote a book with Deepak Chopra, started studying Ayurveda, getting really into spirituality. And then this book is really bringing forward modern yogic teachings, specifically from Paramahansa Yogananda, who brought yoga to the West, and showing how necessary and useful and practical they are in today's world. And so the premise of the book is connecting to the true self, which is this unique energy inside of you. So the reason we're so susceptible to the marketing and we think we're not enough is because we over-identify with what the yogis called the ego, the shell. Like you were saying, Ruben, what we look like, how much money we have, what we've achieved. And when we do that, we're never off the hamster wheel. There's never enough. There's always going to be the next job promotion or the next 5 pounds to lose or whatever it is. So in contrast, we can still know what we look like. We can still, work to improve things, learn new skills, go back to school or whatever. But at the same time, it doesn't mean our self-worth goes up and down. We connect to this uniqueness inside of us. And what that does is it takes away the stress, the hustle, and also the competition, right? We see a lot of like superior, inferior, when in reality, we're all equal. We're just different and unique.
Yeah. No one's less than anyone else.
Exactly.
And I mean, regardless of where we were born, what's happening, where we all have the opportunities and the choices, but we start getting these constructs around us.
Yes.
And thinking our uniqueness isn't a special gift.
Exactly. It's this, again, this constant using the 5 senses, the peripheral nervous system always looking out. So, for instance, we're always looking at TikTok or social media. And then the way our linear brain works is we contrast, like, here's me and here's this person, and they have more followers, or she's skinnier, or he's more muscular, whatever it is. And then when we learn to have practices like meditation, stillness, art, where we're not in that mindset, we're bringing our energy back inward into our central nervous system. So now there's more and more research around this. Our spine and our brain, we activate different parts of us that feel joyful and connect to this feeling of love and oneness. And then we get out of that constant inferior, superior, which makes us really stressed out all the time. And then we don't enjoy our life.
And we're always looking for how can we plug that hole?
Yes.
And the energy expenditure, right?
Yes. energy and also financial, because then we get tricked into thinking we need to buy all this crap. And our nervous systems, we were talking about stress earlier, and it's just, it impacts our whole life. It impacts our microbiome. It impacts our moods, literally our neurotransmitters. So underneath all this focus on form and all the surface of life, underneath there is this peaceful, loving place that we can anchor into, but we have to have some practices. I'm really into self-care and tools and practices that we actually employ, because we can hear these ideas and they sound nice, but if we don't actually apply it, it just becomes like a thought, and it has to be something we experience.
So with that being said, it sounds easier said than done.
Easier
right?
said than done.
I always say, like, choose love, live through love, look at love. And I say it's not easy.
Yes.
It's much easier to give someone the bird than say, you know what, I wish you well, and like, you didn't do that. And it's the truth, but that's a reaction and versus a response. So how can we start unpacking that in very practical ways to own it and not think it's so daunting to practice self-love? Well, I don't have time to do that. Or how am I supposed to fit that in when I have X, Y, and Z and all these responsibilities? And it could all, it starts as waking up and smiling, or what you're putting in your mouth, or how we're breathing, how we're reacting. So what are ways that we can encourage people to start finding this peace and this conservation of energy?
Yes. So I'm a big believer in, first of all, morning routine, like on a very practical, we'll start practical and then go a little bit broader. But how we start the day impacts everything. So the yogis have always taught that the closer you can meditate to when you wake up has a huge impact on your day, because we're not pulled yet. The external sense is pulled into the emails and, your heart starts racing and the thoughts and the Instagram and all of that. So if you just take 5 minutes to connect inside, breathe, you find this place of more stillness. And what I like to do after I meditate is I make an intention for the day. I want to live with kindness and love, whatever arises, something simple like that. And so in that way, you're just more in tune with yourself. You are more in tune with practical things as well. When you're actually hungry, you're less susceptible to food cravings. There's less of this wanting to be nourished from the external, whether that's in validation or wanting compliments or wanting to be better than someone else, right? So we just start to feel this energy inside of us. And then, yes, I believe in lifestyle as well. I'm also a nutritionist. So food, body, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth are the cornerstones that I teach. So when you start the day with something simple like hot water with lemon, which is also an ancient Ayurvedic practice, we start to put heat in the body. You start to connect inside. You start to have more vitamin C. Your digestion starts to get activated. When we feel really full and stuffed in our body, we tend to feel really rigid and more aggressive in our lives. Exactly. So little steps we can make to improve our nutrition, meditation. And then in the new book, there's a big focus on introspection as well, because we realize more and more that a lot of us have wounds, right? Bessel van der Kolk, I think I'm saying his name right. He wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And he was the first person that I know to really say, hey, 75% of Americans have experienced some form of trauma. And what that does is it shuts down our heart. We start to see things in a bit of a distorted way. It starts to fit our story. So for me, part of my journey was growing up in a very 100% Caucasian town, and I'm mixed. My mother comes from the Philippines. My dad is a mix as well. So I was always the exotic one, just like, oh, what are you? Like, I'm a human, but what are you? It's just this way, even from birth, just feeling like I didn't fit in. And so it really just set me on this trajectory for finding ways to feel comfortable within myself and to just start to go deeper, because I never felt safe on the outside. So once I started to dig into that a little bit and why, I was driven to become a perfectionist. I wanted that validation. I was obsessed with being number one in my class. For me, it was very academic. I had to always have 100, if not, I would beat myself up. So I think when we don't want to live there forever, but it's important to look at some of the wounds that affect us to this day. And once we introspect, we can start to bring that self-compassion, that love in. And only when we're more self-compassionate with ourselves can we really be, I believe, truly compassionate and loving with others. So there's practices, guided journaling, and just different ways we can start to look and, reclaim our wholeness and go forward with more love.
No, and we talk about these things and we know it's the case. And I've been in relationships where I was in a relationship with this woman did not love herself. So it didn't matter how much love I gave her, how big I showed up in every which way, it wasn't going to land. It wasn't going to be received. But if we can't be compassionate and empathetic and loving to ourselves, how can we actually do that to somebody else and show up that way?
Yeah, exactly. So I think relationships are really interesting as well. I talk a lot about the journey of my husband and I in this book as well. He is my greatest mirror. We say this because the love is so deep. It's brought up these shadows that I didn't know were there and he didn't know were there for him, because sometimes you don't let yourself get so close to someone. And in my case, I always picked safer people. And when it started to feel not good, you just you bail. Yeah. But when the love is so strong, you say, okay, I really have to look inside of me. So it's not the journey for everybody, partnership, but I can say for myself, it's been a huge learning experience and seeing, I really take things literally sometimes. It fits my wound. It's almost like we're finding a way to say, oh, this person is saying something that's actually hurting me. But it's really a perspective. And so we just keep widening and widening the perspective. And then we just are able to live in more love. Yeah, I'll pause there. I have a love chapter in the new book, Ruben, I want to talk to you about, because it's a different kind of love, not romantic love as well.
Oh, yeah, there's multiple levels of love. I think most people go straight to romantic
Exactly.
love
When we think about love.
It's either that or it's lust. I'm like, oh, I love those shoes. I want that. So it's confusing. I think lust also gets in the way, or passion.
Yes.
And yeah, we could talk about that, but let's go back a little bit, because our partners are our mirrors.
Yes.
And they should be. My wife said in her vows, I will be your greatest adversary. And she doesn't let down. She's a beast in a good way. I don't mean that
yes.
badly.
She's helping you purify.
Totally. And it's a challenge. And
yes.
Once you commit to someone, it's like we're in it to win it all the way. We didn't get married to not be married in 10 years or 5 years or whatever.
It's not an experiment.
Exactly. It's like, no, this is a commitment for life. It's a vow. And hopefully it goes 60 plus years. Every time I come across someone that's like, yeah, we're doing our 60th end. I'm like, that is amazing.
Wow.
Like, good for you.
Yeah.
I'm in awe of that. But you add kids into the mix. You want to talk about a mirror? Then there's your child.
Oh, yeah. I love being a mother. So I have 2 boys, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I didn't really think about being a parent until kind of right before we got pregnant and I became one. Because, there's people that are like, I've been dreaming my whole life. And
I wasn't like that too,
I was just kind of living my life, traveling around the world. I backpacked for 3 years. I had all these different adventures. That was a huge part of my philosophy learning as well. But then this little creature was put on my chest and it changed my whole world. And it was like a whole other level of love. And just the selflessness and the unconditionalness was the first time I felt that. Because with partners too, as pure as we try to be, there are conditions and we choose them and we're trying to purify back. But with children, it is an experience, an unconditional love that teaches us so much.
And, I think they are our greatest teacher.
Yes.
I think that is what it is to be human, because I didn't have this burning desire either. And then you meet your wife, my wife, and your wife. And you're like, let's do this. We had the convo. We did it. Like, we planned it. This has been part of our path and our journey. Like, get the dog, have a kid, another, like, keep going. But I wouldn't change it. I couldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. And I have friends that it's not their journey either. I have friends that have consciously chosen not to have kids, and that's okay too. Some of them love their dogs very much. It's all the ways that, love comes out. But I can say for me, it has been a really important part of my healing and growth path is the family life.
Yeah.
householder
and
path.
it is what it is too. Everyone has their own journey. That's what I
Yeah.
like about these conversations, because we're sharing our journeys. I get to unpack a little bit more of mine every so often, depending on how our conversations go. But this is about you, and someone's like, "Oh, Kimberly, this is how she's doing it." And if we can just show people that the way they're doing it isn't wrong, but maybe there's a way to amplify it, to change it, to tweak it, to show up.
Yes.
And I think the hardest thing in our space, and in the space of, let's call it personal development and motivation and inspiration, is there's no lack of information. There
Yes.
is also tons of how to do it. But sometimes we get so much how to do it thrown at us that it's like a fire hydrant just going straight at you. We don't then practice it. So it's like, how do we start practicing? How do we make it simple? I know meditation to me sometimes is like, oh my God, it's this thing. But I've had enough conversations now. It's like my 10-minute walk to the gym is my meditation before I go to the gym. Like, this is part of my morning routine. But I used to
Yes.
think it wasn't a meditation, because I'm not sitting there with my legs crossed and
Yes. So you mentioned there's so much information, and that's the thing. When we are so heady and it's all up here, it's very mental, it actually blocks the heart. So in a really simplistic sense, meditation is getting out of the head and dropping into the heart. It's just a time through breath work and different practices where we're not thinking. And so thinking mentalization is where we create all these different ways we separate ourselves, or we create that division. And so if we have more of that space where we're really coming from the heart, it just opens up everything. And the other thing, and I talk about that in the You Are Love chapter, is I think a lot of people think about love as a noun, right? It's this thing we get. If I'm in the perfect relationship, I'll get love. Or, it's this almost like this object, and this stressful, like I'm trying to pull it in.
it's a trophy.
Exactly. It's another way of acquiring something, but really in its purest sense, love is a verb, and it's something that we live, we practice it. So it's a way of being. And so you can activate that energy every day in simple ways by kindness. I say in the morning, the first few people, especially that you contact, be extra loving, whether it's the barista, give a nice tip or give a smile, or just be loving to those around you. So you start activating love as an actual force that comes from the inside of you. So Paramahansa Yogananda tells this story about the Himalayan musk deer. I tell this story in the book. It's really interesting. So in India, every spring, it's a specific type of deer, and it secretes this like a musk smell in its abdomen. It's a sac in its abdomen. And it excites the deer, and he starts looking around and sniffing around the bushes and under the rocks, and he can't find it. The deer can't find it. So he starts to get really agitated. And then every year in India, a certain percentage gets so agitated, they throw themselves off the mountain to their death. Yeah, that's that kind of like, I can't find the whatever I'm looking for, the love. But actually it was coming from inside of them.
But it didn't know.
It didn't know. So that's what I think for us humans, especially, the love is there. We don't ever get love from someone else, even if it's our child or even if it's our spouse or our best friend. It's just that person helps you to feel the love that's already inside of you. So meditation, stillness, acts of kindness, even small, simple ways you can be kind to yourself and others, it starts to activate the energy of love. So it just becomes a real tangible force in your life that you can then expand.
I love how you put that. I always say love is a verb.
Yes.
It's a choice. It's a way of life. We have
Being
to
it.
actively choose this and be in it.
Yes.
And unfortunately, fear is just so much easier to live in, and anxiety and stress and all these things, because it's coming at us.
Another thing about love is that we limit it when we say my family, my clan, my country, right? It's just this like circle of who we think we give love to. So for me, the experience I shared in that chapter is when my mom passed away really suddenly. So it was, we found out she had cancer on Valentine's Day. And then I went from like, I know how to, I've worked with a lot of cancer patients in the past. Like, I know how to heal her. We're going to do all this stuff. We're going to green juice and all this stuff. And then very quickly it went to, she's not going to live past 2 weeks. And then it was like any day. So she passed March 29th, which is within 3 days of my first son turning 1. So I had this baby, and then my mom was passing, and I'm so grateful I got to hold her in my arms as she passed. And it was this profound moment because I was just terrified of losing my mom, and it was like the worst thing that you could ever imagine could happen. But as she passed, I felt this really different perspective of love, which is that it really is everywhere, and it changes form and it looks different ways. So I feel really close to her still. I pray to her in the spirit world. But I also learned a big lesson in non-attachment, which is a very yogic word. It doesn't mean we are cold, but it means approaching love in this more non-personal way. Meaning, if I'm so attached to my mom and then she passes and then I'm in grief and then it blocks my heart, that isn't real love. Love is giving without anything in return. So she was really struggling for a couple of days, and I could tell, and you hear this a lot with people, she didn't want to go. And part of it is because she and my dad had been married for like 40 years. And I could tell she was just so worried about my dad. And my dad is pretty helpless. He moved in with us afterwards. He's like one of those guys who never cooked a meal for himself, whatever. But I said to her, Mom, I was bawling, of course, like, it's okay to let go. Like, I'll take care of Daddy. Like, you can let go. And it was the hardest thing I've ever said in my life because I didn't want her to go. The selfish, egoic part of me was like, no, stay here. We'll put you on life support. I just need you around. But then the true self part of me was saying, like, no, let your soul rest. And so it really did blow open my heart and made me realize that when we don't expect anything in return, we're just giving because we have this endless supply that we have access to. We just open up the channel. We never have to hold. We never have to keep it small. We never have to just love our little family. And also when I was backpacking for 3 years, and I was in Africa for about 7-8 months, and I was by myself the whole time, but I'd meet people along the way. Yeah. I was in Asia for 18 months. It really taught me that as well. Just, we're not really strangers. Like, if we focus on the surface, we can say, hey, your skin is a little bit of a different color, or I was educated in a different way, or we speak different languages. But underneath, we're all from source. Yeah. This life force, this, whatever you want to say, universe, divine energy, higher intelligence, it runs through everything and everyone equally. So if we can just soften the mind and go into the heart and go underneath, you really feel that instantly. Yeah.
No, wow. There's so much in that. It was a powerful story, and not a lot of us realize that. I'm going to hear that again when we get the episode ready. So I'm excited to read.
It's one of the first times I've told the story without crying, by the way.
Listen to it. There was a piece to you, though.
I never know when I'm going to cry, and I prepare myself.
I was thinking, no, you said it in this way of like, you owned it. You owned the story, and like it landed for me. So.
Oh, good.
Because I was hearing a couple of things where you're talking about, we have love and then we have grief. And I'm thinking, oh, that's our identity now. So we're too caught up in our identity within those moments, which causes us to block off to the grief and become something. And now we identified as, I had a mom and she loved me and I loved her. I don't have a mom. Now I'm grieving. So that's my new identity. I'm momless.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So that was one thing I heard. Another thing was just realizing you're a new mom. You just had a son, and then your mom's passing to the next place to watch over you. But it's that cycle of life and humanity, and that's what it is. And you're talking about how like love recycles, and it's limitless.
Limitless. And then the next part of the story, which I also tell, as you said, I was a new mom. I lost my mom, and shortly after, I became a single mom. So when she passed, it was like what the F just happened, because she was so healthy and strong. And I was working with a lot of different clients back then, and she was helping me. Like, she was just this incredibly energetic, powerful woman. So when that happened, you realize like we are not in control. Anything can happen at any time. So then I just started looking at my life, and my partner, with the father of my first child, it wasn't It wasn't going up. It was just kind of like this. And it was okay, but it wasn't.
Clarity.
And he's an amazing person. So I'm not, throwing him under the bus or anything.
Yeah.
He's just not my person. I'm not his person. So all this fear, like you talked about in the beginning of like, oh shit, is it okay to move out on my own? How am I going to handle this financially and like safety wise, just many things. But when she passed, I took a really hard look and I just realized I don't want to live a mediocre life. I want the love, like, because I felt that huge like burst of love right around her physical passing. I don't say death because we know love goes on. And I just looked at my relationship and I was like, this is so scary, but I can't do this. So then I moved out on my own and that was a big move. So it was all those things at once. And then what I did so then I met with a monk at the Self-Realization Fellowship. And what he said to me was, Kimberly, he's like, just treat your home like an ashram for 5 months. And so that's what I did. I just focused. I mean, of course, I was still working and taking care of my son. But other than that, I didn't really go out. I just read spiritual texts.
That schedule.
Yeah, I just, at night I would read, the Gita, I reread the Bible, I read all the ancient texts, the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Ramayana, and then I meditated like crazy. And after 5 months, I started coming out into the world and there was such a different rooted sense of groundedness and trust, which is part of love, right? Because if we don't trust, we're in fear and it takes us away from love. So trust is really that we just, like your poster here reminded me of that, where we show up in the fullest of our heart that we can in every moment. And we trust that our lives keep unfolding as it's meant to. So I was just in trust and walking around, and sometime later, through a podcast guest that I met and I did not know very well, he invited me to a dinner party in Venice. And I was like, okay, I'll go. It was like one of those random things. And I went and I met my husband. But the funny thing is, he's completely different than anyone I'd ever dated. From the neck down, he's completely covered in tattoos. He has a gold grill in his teeth. He's a huge meat eater. I'm plant-based, like everything, CrossFit, I'm a yogi, everything you can imagine. But because of this practice of getting out of my head, and I was such an anxious, heady person, living in love, I could feel it right away. And he said in 15 minutes too, he knew I was going to be his wife. It was just like, zzz. So we got married in 2 months. And here we are.
And here's the thing, my wife and I moved pretty quickly, but then people judging like, aren't you moving too fast? I'm like, when you know. Why is there a time limit?
It's beyond time. And that's where time, we go on this tangent too, it's not really linear, right? No. It's like the moments that are really expanded and contracted. And it's, there's a lot we could go into in quantum physics and the quarks and the way that it's actually spiraling. So when people think of time in a really linear way, that's just they're putting their own limitations on it, because when you're coming from this place, when you are coming from love, it isn't time in the way that most people think of it,
Yeah. No, you could say I love you in 1 minute and be like, wow, that was the world record fastest time. Or you could say it in 3 years.
Yes.
But like, it's just that construct. Like if you're going back to time and linear, it's like, the right way to do it is you date this many times, and then now it's time to be engaged, and you're engaged for X amount of time, and then you're married for X. Now you can have kids. Now you can this. Now you can.
Yeah. Who made those rules?
Exactly.
And also, I know people that make like pro-con lists. Like this person is really great. Like my girlfriends will be like, yeah, but da 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 da, and it's very heady, and you can approach it that way too as part of your process. But my experience is when you get out of here, your heart will lead you right. And sometimes you don't know why this person may look really great if you're on dating sites or apps and it's like, oh, we're supposed to match, but it just doesn't feel right. And I've never been on a dating app, but I can guarantee that me and my husband would never have been matched together.
Yeah, because then now you're putting what the head wants to see. It's the resume.
Yes. And sometimes that works for people. But, I know what it's like to be really heady, like I said, and I was that way for the first 20 years of my life. And then when I started backpacking and just started peeling out of that, it's just like this. Like there's a different feeling when you are living more in love, moment to moment. and things tend to open up for you. So there's a chapter I talk about magnetism. And I'll tell you another quick story is I had my heart set on connecting more with Deepak Chopra. So he reviewed my third book. I sent it to him and his team, and he reviewed it. I was like, oh my gosh, Deepak is endorsing me. This is so great. But then I felt like I needed to, there's more we could do together. So I held it in my heart, even though logically it's like, he's really busy and like, who are you to like try to connect with him?
You could talk your way out of it, right?
Exactly. The doubt, the fear. But it was just like a peaceful knowing. And that's what I think about love as well. It's very gentle. And it's peaceful, and it's not pushing you like you have to get these goals done. So I would just held it in my heart. And what happened, I used to live in New York City. I was going to a meeting, and I was going through Union Square, and I should have taken the diagonal across the park, 14th Street. But I decided to go to the left, or my heart was just like kind of guiding me. And I ran right into Deepak on the street. And I said, Deepak, it's Kimberly Snyder. You just reviewed my book. And he was like, Kimberly. And he was so warm. He gave me his cell phone number. And then we just started connecting. We started doing videos together. We went to a coffee shop. And then in 2 hours, we decided to write a book together.
It's amazing.
So that's the power of living in your heart. Sometimes people think it's woo-woo or it's not practical. If we muscle through, we get more done. But I would argue that this more nonlinear approach actually is more magnetic and attractive.
And I agree wholeheartedly, but as an athlete, as a physical guy that played sports my whole life,
Yes.
that other way is just, and especially as a male, that other way just seems right, and the world is built that way. But the more I go the other way, just let it happen. Let it be gentle. Don't force it.
Yes.
Also, another thing, if you feel FOMO for something, and I don't mean like, I'm not at the party yet, I'm running late, more like, oh, if I don't invest in this thing now, I'm going to miss out on this opportunity. Usually that's when you lose all your money or lose all kinds of things, right? If you're doing it out of that head version or I'm missing something out, like entrust our guts.
Yeah.
It's harder, but it's going to guide us.
I think there's a tough time in the modern world, especially for men, this whole concept of masculinity, which is like be strong both outwardly and inwardly and not really show emotion. But the strength does come from that vulnerability and that softness. And we see the divine masculine play out in these different archetypes in the Indian spiritual texts where they are the most loving. And they're still, with the bows and arrows and these great warriors. Yeah. But it's the rigidity that breaks us. If you're not allowing yourself to feel feelings and get into here, your body, it'll show up as inflammation and, adrenal exhaustion and all these things. It will come out. So I look, today I think there's a lot of, we won't get into that too much, but all the conversations around gender and roles. And I just think that this idea of softening more into the heart would benefit so many men and women and, in between, but everyone, but especially with this idea of modern masculinity.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, we go deep on that. We can talk for hours in that space and
yeah, I know you
trigger everyone all over everything. But the thought is like, imagine if we stop forcing things and let things just really happen and be allowed. I think sometimes we're trying to use our head and science and knowledge and also just the word of inclusion and diversity.
Yes.
And the more definitions we add, the more labels we add, the more layers we add, I think we're separating us even further.
Yes.
Like there's male, there's female, and everything in between now. But just let us be what we are, and we'll come out whenever we decide whatever it is that we are. And that's it. Like human, cool.
Yes.
Now move on.
Yes, exactly. And also, like you were saying, just this like very thinking, pushy way is actually really in beta brainwaves. And when we're letting things rise up from us. It is intuition. And that's where we create our best stuff. So going back to, we're not just enough, but we're all unique. And so there's a chapter I talk about, you are a creator. So we're all creators, the artists, but everyone has this ability to tap into their creative power. And so if we're too heady, we start looking around, we're like, oh, maybe I should do it like this person or that, right? We start comparing, or we get trapped, or we get scared. And when we're in this really free place of listening to the intuition and the intuitive messages rise up, which is why meditation is practical because you're going into stillness and you could hear more. And actually after meditation is where I always get out my notebook and I get the best work ideas for my books or my brand or whatever it is. So it's inside of us and we are creative beings. We just have to let that come forward.
I think if we all own that we are the ability of everything.
Yes.
Granted, we have skill sets and stronger in different verticals than others. But like we can all do all the things if we apply ourselves and allow ourselves. But I think it's the quest for perfectionism and to be like that whole thing. Like I work for this company, but if I'm not the CEO, I'm not the best. But like, are you CEO material or are you your position and killing it and awesome at it? As an example, like
exactly. Well, it's like how it looks on paper.
Yeah.
Versus it's like very quantitative versus the quality. And even if you got that job, are you going to be happier? Are you going to feel more joy? Are you going to feel more peace? Are you going to be more stressed out? So part of my career, and it's still there, but it was my full-time career for, about 6 years before I got pregnant, was I used to work with all celebrities and entertainers. And by the way, Ruben, I never planned this. I was teaching, after I went backpacking, I was teaching yoga in New York City, going back to nutrition school. And all I did was start a free blog. And it just started, all I did was tell my yoga students. I knew nothing about SEO or marketing, but it kind of started spreading through New York City. And then my first celebrity found me, Uma Thurman, and I got on a film set. I don't even own a TV to this day. My brain doesn't work very well with screens. I'm a reader. But I started working with all these different people. And I always pray to spirit. I'm like, why am I on this, why am I on this film set? Why am I in this, in this press tour in Europe? Like, I didn't plan for this. I don't really want it. People are like, oh, it's amazing. You're living with Channing Tatum for 4 months, or Reese Witherspoon, all these people I'd work with. And now I realize that, Spirit puts us where we are meant to go and serve. But it also gave me the perspective that we look up to all these people that we think money, fame, beauty, they have the same problems.
Yes.
They have the same stress. They struggle with self-esteem. It doesn't mean you're more peaceful or more joyful. It doesn't matter. Back to we are all equal. So it was a really interesting, that part of my journey, like peek in to really experience that truth. Sometimes we hear it, but when you really see it time and time again, you're like, oh, I'm actually happy that I can go to the grocery store and
not get mobbed.
Exactly. I'm glad that we have this freedom. I like my quiet life.
Yeah. No, what's interesting about that is I'm born and raised in LA, so I've been around a lot of that space.
Yes.
And I almost wish everyone had the opportunity to be friends with a celebrity.
And to see what it's like.
To see like, oh, they're like me.
Yes.
Yeah, we all poop. We all sleep. We all get hungry. We all have stress.
We all have
bleed.
Self-doubt.
It's just we're at a different level with more people know who we are. And I heard this story. I don't know. I think it was Justin Timberlake. And someone in my circle was like, yeah, I don't remember exactly, but they were talking and the kids were like, you're so lucky. Like, you're Justin Timberlake. And then he's like, you know what? Honestly, I am. He's very grateful. It's a cool story. But he was like, no, you're lucky. You can walk around and have life and just be a human.
Yeah.
I don't have that anymore.
So Eckhart Tolle says in A New Earth, I'll never forget this line. He says, to be famous is the bane of human existence, because we're coming back to wholeness. We're coming back to oneness. We're coming back to equality. And when you are famous, you're kind of like this other. You're kind of propped up on a pedestal. And deep down, we know that's not true. We know that no one is really better than anyone else. So it's sort of this like weird karmic situation to work out.
I think the other tough thing, we can move on right after this, is though, like, but now you have to be perfect. Like the Will Smith incident. Like, he had a human moment. I'm not saying one is good, right, wrong, the other. Like, we don't have to unpack it, but like, right now, you can get up and just slap me, or I can slap you for whatever. But it's not going to be this whole thing that upsets the whole world. But it's like this perfectionism that's put on them sometimes too. I think if we're more gentle with them, we could be more gentle with ourselves. Yeah. And so on and so forth.
Yeah, the gentleness and the judgmentalness. which,
And why are we judging?
well, and judging is the opposite of acceptance, and acceptance is part of love. When we can say that we can't really judge someone's journey. And, the yogis say, some texts say that we have 15,000 lives. And out of the 15,000 lives, you are famous in one life. Because in one life, you learn, oh shit, I don't want that anymore. Isn't that interesting? So we learn lessons in every lifetime till we keep purifying and purifying and then really merge with spirit. But I thought that was really interesting when I learned that one.
That is interesting. And also, I've never heard it with that number. I've heard, like, my friend talks about other things. We've come back over and over and over. It's a test. And every time, the more we learn, the easier our journey is every time we come back, because we're that much closer to ascending to wherever it is we go. If
We
it's
learn
next
our
to
lessons.
God, or,
Yes.
and it's like, you know what? I think I'm complete. Now I go to the next level.
Yes, exactly. So we're here, Yogananda puts it as the earth is like our, like a hospital almost. Like we've come to work things out and to learn more and to come, really the essence is to come back to unconditional love. And so we have these great ones that come along the way and all the different walks and paths, the yogis, Jesus, showing us how it's to be done. And these lessons, it's like Jesus treated the kings and the lepers and the prostitutes the same. Underneath, he could see that spirit, God is in everybody. And so all the surface stuff, he was able to bypass. And so that's the lesson for all of us, because it is in the way the world is set up as well, with all the, the social media, all the stuff. It's easy to be judgy. It's easy to look over at a picture and try to tear someone down, even subconsciously, to make yourself feel better.
And that's
being
the key.
aware.
To make you feel better, right? Make yourself feel better. You're judging because what is it inside of you that you're actually judging on the opposite side of what you're saying?
It's all a mirror. We said relationships are mirrors, but so is everybody. So it's a good practice, introspection, and just to notice what are some of the things that you judge about other people, because there's something in you, and when you really own that and you can soften and look underneath, there's huge healing that can come from that, and expansion. And the love just grows, and then everything in your life will grow. Abundance, everything.
You get easier.
Easy, well, yeah, more easeful, more peaceful, just more flow.
No, be like water.
Yes.
So let's dive a little more into your love chapter, and we'll start with, how do you define love?
So love, that's a deep one. So as I mentioned, it's a verb, it's a way of being, and in the purest sense, we can say that at the essence, at the cell, like beyond the cellular level, just the energy inside of us, we can say that we are pure light and love, right? So who we are is not this form. It's not all the things you can list on paper. It's the energy. So the true self means that inside of every single human is that spark, that we could say spirit individualized. And so that spirit inside of us is that light, and it is that love. So like we were saying, if we are open to the idea of reincarnation, or that our souls keep going on and on, the part of us that keeps going is the love inside of you. So the more we tune into that, that is that energy that is always gentle and kind and forgiving, and is contextual versus literal. Going and giving people a break, not being so sensitive all the time, and finding the oneness and the equality inside of us. Anytime we slip into, again, back to superior, inferior, or that's different than me, or I don't like that, push that away, we're not in love, we're in the fear, we're in the ego. So the love is our true identity, and it's that energy inside of us. So it's past, it's like deep, deep, deep inside. And in a, if you want to think about it in meditation terms, it is in our central nervous system. We say that through these chakras, these energy centers, this is how we connect to spirit, through the Sahasrara, the crown chakra, and then it comes down. And so when we meditate and we focus on our third eye, we actually pull in energy from the medulla oblongata, the back of the skull. So it's about coming into this real expanded energy in here. But we limit ourselves, like I said, if we're focusing always going outward. What does this taste like? And we start just being addicted to food, or what am I looking like? I need to buy all this stuff. I need to be like these people on social media, whatever. So it's like the more we come inside, that experience of love, it's beyond words, but like you said, it's a verb. It's something we live and it's experience, and it just takes over your whole life. For me, it's everything. Like, let me think about that.
No. It's what you're saying, because I want to say, like, I believe in all these things. Like, God isn't everything, light isn't everything, Mother Earth, the universe, spirit, whatever you want to believe, because it's not about making anyone wrong.
No,
And
it's all
you
different
don't believe
concepts.
any of this, but what are the lessons in all these things we could take in, right? Put the Quran and the Bible, put all those books together. They all say the same thing.
They all say the same thing. All true religions, it's all just different ways up the mountain. And the mountain is oneness and love. You know, that's it. And so God, universe, whatever words you want to use, it is getting to this place where we feel oneness. I really believe that. And once we feel that, it's like, I'm you, you're me. I could never hurt you, because it's just like, you can't. And it actually makes forgiveness obsolete, because we're saying, oh, you did something wrong, I have to forgive. It's just saying, hey, everything is actually just unfolding. This perfection that Buddha talked about, where it's not this imperfect, oh, it'll be perfect when it's a flower. It's actually a perfect bud that's evolving in each moment. So you just see the perfection, even if you don't understand someone or what they're doing, it's easy to look down at them. It's just full acceptance, I think, is part of love, because it means we're not judging anymore, because that's the mind. We don't know shit. If you think about it, we don't know.
We're doing our best.
Where we came from, what's going on.
Yeah.
So how can we really make judgments? It's very egoic. And so I think a huge part of love as well is humility. And the more deeply humble we become, that softening underneath opens up so much. Yeah. It's the prideful people that get really weak.
And then
entitlement, self-righteousness, all of it. It's all separators, you know?
No, I mean, and that's well said and perfect. And then the other thing you brought in a little bit earlier was love and light.
Yes.
And like, we're not a being. I mean, take us apart. We're a bunch of atoms crashing into each other to make what I am sitting in this chair right now. So if you could speed it up and take it all apart, or like, you can see it that way. And then when you start really realizing that, like, well, we're all that too.
Yeah, I mean, you could go the quantum physics route, thinking about the photons and all the, you know, the light, speed of light and all that. And also, if you look at the Bible, where they talk about the written word and then the light. So the light was always there as a formless energy. So when we say that we're light at our core, we aren't really the form. So if we start to identify more as energetic beings instead of form beings, we don't get so stressed. I'm not saying we're not going to care about what we look like. You care, I care, everybody cares, but it's not as stressful. Like, this is all there is. So as I'm aging, you know, I'm screwed. Like, everything's going to hell, right? It's a different perspective, the light inside, because it changes form over time, and it does keep going on. And that's another thing I experienced when I was holding my mom. And I don't, you know, I wish everybody could have this experience. I feel really grateful I actually held her in that moment. It was like towards the end. So my dad, who was not able to handle things really well, he was across. I was the one that had to handle the doctors. He was just like full breakdown. And I say that with love and compassion, because I understand, you know?
Yeah.
But he was on the other side of the room. So I was holding her. And as she took her last breath, this is something I experienced as a truth, I just felt the energy move, like up. I didn't feel like dead. I never say someone's died. So in India, they never say such and such died. They say they've passed from their body, right? You know, there's no death, and we know energy keeps changing form. So it was just that it went somewhere else. And once I experienced that, like I was saying, it just blows you open to, wow, love is everywhere, everything. It's not just for my little family, but we're all connected.
Yeah. No, when I was a kid, I had a similar experience, but I don't want to compare it to your story, but I kind of know what you were talking about.
Yeah.
As far as that energy release and moving. And the thing just prior to that, you were talking about light and aging.
Yes.
I mean, ageism's a whole other thing in this country, but as we age, we can look at it like, why are we dimming our light? let's continue to have our light shine and shine brighter. So
Yes.
maybe how do we shine brighter and reframing it that way? Instead of getting more dim, let's get brighter as
Yes.
we age, as we get older. We have more wisdom. We have more knowledge. Let's turn the dimmer up.
Exactly. And so the light comes from your heart. It comes from here. And so we block the light with the head, you know, and it's not like, you know, we need to know information and get around the world. But if we're always, you know the difference when someone's completely in their head and it's all quantitative and everything's here, here, versus when someone's really speaking from their heart. Yeah. This is how the light shines more, because you're letting spirit come through you more, and you're not blocked by all your ideas and concepts. You know, the Tao Te Ching, which I love, by Lao Tzu, the ancient text from China. The whole thing is about let go of all your ideas. And it's, you know, the line I love, one of the lines I love is do nothing and nothing gets undone. And what that means is just let this power, this energy flow through you. You will be guided through your intuition, and then everything of, you know, your life falls into place. It's just very heady pushing. This is where I think I need to be, and this is what I think I need to achieve. It actually is very limiting at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I always say be, do, have, right? If we be it, then we can do it, and then we can have it. But I think most of us are operating with what we don't have. And how do we do the things to get the things that we want that we don't have? And it goes on a circle, but we forget to, well, how do I be in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. And it also goes the opposite way, where in the beginning of the spiritual journey, we could say a lot of us are obsessed with having stuff. I need that Corvette, or that Corvettes probably aren't the coolest cars now, like Porsche. I don't know why I said Corvette.
Lamborghini Urus. That's my dream car.
And then you're like, oh, but I want to I want to be in this position. And then eventually it's like, I just want to be me. This is where I feel really good. And that feeling of contentment and peace and joy and love means the other stuff isn't as important. But then ironically, it flows in easier.
It's a bonus.
Yes, it's a bonus because we've opened the pathway to abundance.
And now it's like, I don't need it. I don't have to have it. It doesn't define me. But now you have it. You appreciate it. You have a different kind of love for it. It's a whole nother energy, because in my early 20s, I made a lot of money, and everything I bought in a mass was to define who I was and prove success.
Sure.
Now it's the total opposite. Like, I really want that. And I think about it, I'm going to get it because I want it, not because it defines me or I need it or I'm filling a hole. It's like, no, I want that. I want it in my life. I want it in my circle.
Yes, and you enjoy it, and then you're not so like, I need it for my validation, like life or death.
Yeah. No, well, so amazing for coming in today. Thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, I could keep talking all day about this with you. I mean, this is going all over the place. But there is one final question that I always ask everyone as we bring this down to a close. How do you define living a life through love?
Well, thank you, Ruben. I always want to say thank you for having me on the show. And I really enjoyed speaking to you. And this is so funny about time. It feels like we've been talking for like 5 minutes, but it's been a lot longer, I'm sure. Yeah. So how do I define a life living through love?
Living a life through love.
So it's living from this nonlinear place in your heart with love, with kindness, acceptance, and unconditional love. So that means when you go, I like how you put through love. It means that these conditions, these limiting ideas of separation no longer apply. We keep getting there a little bit more and more when you look in someone's eyes and you just feel connected more and more. And this idea of strangers starts to become obsolete as well. So we live with kindness, acceptance, and unconditional love more and more, just as we open ourselves up to it.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I loved being with you and chatting.
You're welcome. And where can everybody find you?
So everybody can find me. My website is mysaluna.com, where we have all our courses and products and our Feel Good podcast, my books. And on social, I'm @_ Kimberly Snyder.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Live Through Love. If you love this episode, you'll love this episode.